pretty much every YouTuber you run into has a course. So here's one example, right? We have NeetCode. You go into the bio, you go to NeetCode.io. Now I will say NeetCode.io is a little bit different from other courses that I've seen because it has kind of a built-in application. So you can kind of use LeetCode style progress. But when you go to the pricing, right, this is the biggest issue I see with a lot of these courses where they're charging, to me anyway, a pretty absurd amount. And so with NeetCode, it looks like about $297. I don't know where those $3 went. I guess that's his idea of the value. But that gives you the lifetime. And then of course, for the 1 year, it's $120. So if you go to LeetCode, the premium for LeetCode is about $159 a year. And you can actually get a monthly subscription. In my opinion, that's a better value because LeetCode is actually what you're going to need to get jobs, unfortunately. You know, NeetCode, I think it has a pretty good roadmap, but ultimately, if you're looking for a high ROI, LeetCode has job-specific sort bys. And so like if I'm trying to work at Albertsons, I can sort by Albertsons and get the latest reported LeetCode for Albertsons. And so you end up with a much better value doing it that way. Because you also get, access to message boards and all that stuff. I want to ask, if you were trying to get good at basketball, would you buy a book about basketball? And so NeetCode, in my opinion, is one of the lesser bad examples. One example I found is from this YouTuber LowLevel. So if you go into his course, of course he has Academy in the URL, just so you know it's official.
What is this, Hogwarts?
And a trend you'll see with a lot of these websites is a very AI slopified landing page, which in my opinion is fine. That's not really the product that's being sold. And so if it's just to get them into the position to actually buy the product, that's fine. In his case, he's selling it pretty close to NeetCode's value. The thing that irks me a little bit is the claim that it's a $799 value.
$7.99.
So if you do the math on that, that's over 1,000 McDonald's chicken nuggets. Part of the allure, I guess, is that you get a course completion certificate. Just imagine walking into an interview with that as being part of your bullet points. Like, oh yeah, I took the LowLevel Academy Access course. But it goes even worse in my opinion. So if you scroll down on this page, you also find a bunch of reviewers. Now this is a common trend with AI slopified websites where they will have names, but really no way to prove it. So in this case, we have Douglas here, Sharian, and DV. And when you try to click on their profile, it doesn't link to anything. Really, there's no way to disprove that these are real reviews. So I haven't taken this course, and so I can't comment on it. But I think if I actually felt the course was valuable that I was selling, I think I would put actual feedback and have it pointed to somewhere. For all we know, this is just written by LowLevel himself. The next subject we have here is Traversy.
Traversy.
This guy's been around for a really long time. I actually watched his videos back in college. I think he's pretty good at explaining things. However, I think he has a bit of a saint complex when it comes to his courses.
I make these out of the kindness of my heart.
This video here is a pretty recent video, and he actually says, oh, people keep telling me my courses are so cheap, man. But when you really go into his website and you spend more than a second looking around, you realize he's really not selling it for much cheaper than anyone else. And so he has the opportunity to buy separate courses, right? So per course, it's about $20, $25. But if you actually look at, what a one-to-one membership would cost on his versus anyone that I just mentioned, it's pretty much about the same, $200. And another annoyance I want to bring up is this idea of paying for access to Discord.
Discord community?
Imagine paying just to be part of a community. Like what do we really get out of a Discord community? And then we see your priority support. I can't imagine what level of support. I'm assuming that doesn't mean I can just contact Traversy and get one-to-one instructions.
Yeah, I'm just wondering, how do I do this FizzBuzz?
I'm assuming it means, if I have an issue with the website, I get help there. With that wording, it doesn't tell me exactly what I get. And of course, the certificate of completion, basically equivalent to a high school diploma written in crayon. The most expensive one I found was from this YouTuber called NetworkChuck. In his case, his whole shtick is kind of anti-AI. So he focuses on hacking AI. If you go through his videos, a lot of them are kind of about this kind of stuff, which is also another common trend, right? If you're selling bicycles. Typically, you're going to make videos about bicycles.
Oh shit.
In this case, he's selling, looks to be about a 2-day event for $2,000. A typical college course, I think if you go to a community college, you're looking at spending anywhere from 2 to 3K for a full quarter. And that gets you, valid credits towards a class that's like official. It gets you access to a teacher with office hours that's going to help you, get through anything you're struggling with. And on top of that, it contributes to a degree. So looking at this price, it is a little bit much. Now, maybe there's more included that I'm not seeing here. Maybe you get some free lunch. So I've been talking a lot of shit here, but I do think it's important to look at both sides. So there's actually communities dedicated to selling courses and kind of discussing the strategies behind them. One thing I will say, and I think it's definitely not a thing where it's just, made in a day. It typically takes a lot of time. You have to, carve out a roadmap and actually record the videos. So definitely there's some time investment to these courses. I'm not denying that. However, I could record myself eating pretzels for 3 hours. Does that mean it's worth 3 hours of my time? And in my opinion, coding is something that you can't learn by watching. Also, if I'm selling a 2-hour video of me eating pretzels, I'm not going to come out here and say, hey guys, I'm just trying to provide value to the community and kind of picture it as I'm providing a good value. I'm just going to tell you straight up, this is a money grab. To me, that's a bit more honest. And some people do that. One example is Cherno. I don't know if he actually has courses that he sells, but from looking at one of his later videos, it looks like he doesn't. He also has some links at the bottom where he kind of goes into the stuff that he uses. There's like an affiliate type of program there. I like this better because then it's not, you're not trying to hide that you're providing some value to somebody. You're just saying, hey, yeah, if you want to support me, here's some links to support me. Another good example, ThreatInteractive. He has, straight up Patreon links. Again, in my opinion, it's a better, less dishonest way of asking for support. And then you even go deeper and he has, merchandise that he sells. I would rather that. It's like if a crack dealer was selling crack, but he came to me and he said, oh, I'm selling drugs. It's like, dude, just tell me you're selling crack.
Needs weed when you got crack.
Get that up to the forefront because it's important, right? I don't want to go deep into the discussion and find out that this is just a bunch of dog water. So as I mentioned, there's subreddits dedicated to this kind of stuff. And a lot of articles out there. A lot of these are kind of SEO bait. So like I found this article on Medium where this guy spent 200 hours testing React courses. I don't know if he straight up just watched 200 hours straight up to the dome. If you dig deeper into this, you'll find out that he has his own thing that he's got, this thing called curricular dev, which is basically a platform for courses. And so as with everything, they frame it as though they're helping and being a saint and trying to help you out, but then you go deeper and they've got something they're selling. And that's life, right? And another example, back in the day, I was kind of studying for GMAT many years ago when I had this weird aspiration of being in law school. I ended up going with the software development route, but a common trend I found when I was, looking for resources in these subreddits was these people that would, you'd read through this and it's like they're all recommending the same thing. Like in this case, it's this TTP course. Pretty much every account suggests it. And after a minute, you start getting skeptical. And so you look at their channel and you start to realize, oh, this person's entire channel seems to be dedicated to advertising this. And so you start to wonder, like, how many of these people are real people and how many of them are just bots? There's actually a study done, actually a few studies that I found where, they were kind of going into this idea of, does watching a video equate to learning? Effectively, the idea is that your brain thinks that it's learning and it thinks that it's progressing just because it's watching something that it believes is helpful. But in reality, you're not learning shit, right? For $200 on one of these stupid courses, you can get probably almost a year of AI chat subscription.
At least until token inflation kicks in.
And kind of going back to the question I posed earlier, right? Would you buy a book about basketball to become good at playing basketball? When I tell you that, I feel like most people would perceive that as, oh, that's ridiculous, right? Why would I do that? That's absurd. To me, coding is no different. There's certain pathways in your brain that you really need to activate and train. And so time spent coding really equates to being a better coder. I hate to compare coding to basketball, but that's just, to me, a good example of really coding as a skill. Even prompting an agent is a skill. And so I encourage you to stop looking at this fluff.